Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora has been on our radar for some time, but it wasn't until this year's Ubisoft Forward that we got a clear idea of what kind of a game it is. Despite being developed by Massive Entertainment, the studio behind the Division games, Frontiers of Pandora clearly has a lot of Far Cry DNA. Here are 11 things that we noticed or have questions about in the most recent trailer. First off, let's set the stage. You play as a Na'vi who was abducted by the RDA and raised in human customs, but also trained to fight with human technology. That explains the gun-wielding Na'vi. This messed up project was the brainchild of this guy, John Mercer, who looks to be the big bad. The goal here was to make these Na'vi child soldiers fight their own kind, but before that could happen, the events of the first film took place and the RDA was forced to evacuate. On the way out, Mercer orders you and the other Na'vi children killed, but luckily, somebody put you in cryosleep instead. That raises a question though, who put you in cryosleep and what happened to the other kids? These are good questions that'll undoubtedly be answered in time, but based on the number of fingers your savior has, they're a genetically engineered avatar, not a native Na'vi. That suggests that not all the human characters in the game are necessarily bad, but will they actually be any help in your liberation of Pandora? We'll have to wait and see. Your character comes out of cryosleep 15 years after the first movie, just in time for the RDA's dramatic return to Pandora. That puts it squarely in the same time frame as The Way of Water. The game's setting is the Western frontier, which is a part of the planet we haven't seen before, so it seems unlikely any familiar faces will show up, but you never know. Massive's goal here was to tell a new story set in the universe, not try to connect to the movies. So that answers the when and the where, but what about the who? Well, that's kind of up to you. You'll be creating your own Na'vi hero and customizing their appearance. How much, if at all, your decisions will affect the narrative remains to be seen, but at the very least, the goal here is to allow players to take some ownership of their character. As for the moment-to-moment gameplay, well, it looks a lot like Far Cry. There'll be RDA facilities to liberate in classic Outpost fashion. You'll have your choice of going in loud, putting your human training and gear to good use, or you can take a stealthier approach using lower-tech Na'vi weaponry and maybe disabling some alarms along the way. We get a look at explosive arrows in action, so expect to be crafting some different types of projectiles and possibly customizing your weapons. You've also got Na'vi senses that can be used to tag enemies from a distance. So yeah, basically Far Cry. One way Avatar will deviate from Ubisoft's other open-world shooter series is that your Na'vi biology has you almost twice the size of your human foes, which doesn't really seem like a fair fight, unless of course they're outfitted with amp suits, which a lot of them are. Even then, you'll be able to rip enemies out of those, but something tells us that's not going to be possible right away. We get a brief glimpse of a skill tree, and it seems like you're using your neural queue to commune with Awa and relive memories of the warrior. In other words, you can shove your alien ponytail into a magic plant and unlock some sick takedowns. Never has a skill tree been quite so literal. In a good open world, the main character is the world itself, and Frontiers of Pandora looks like it understood the assignment. The key thing here, to set it apart from every other open world, is the verticality. There are floating mountains and massive trees and giant plants that'll launch you into the air. Getting around will have you relying heavily on your Ikran, or Banshee. How that relationship actually affects gameplay seems like it'll really determine whether or not this experience feels unique. Like Jake Sully, you'll be undergoing the rite of passage of your first flight, which entails taming one of these kick-ass space pterodactyls so it'll be your best friend. It looks like you'll be able to feed and customize it, which is reminiscent of horses in Red Dead Redemption 2 or Breath of the Wild. But Ikran can fly. Are they any good in a fight? NPC animal sidekicks were a big hit in Far Cry 5 and 6, and it seems like your connection with your Ikran will be even stronger than your working relationship with Cheeseburger the bear. Again, Frontiers of Pandora has a lot of familiar Ubisoft DNA. The Ikran flight reminded us a bit of the VR game Eagle Flight, and there's been plenty of bird's eye view stuff in the Assassin's Creed games. But true to the source material, forming a bond with your Ikran will be integral to the experience. Far Cry has had rideable animals and it's had aerial combat, but this looks like the best of both worlds. And, you know, of course you can ride the dire horses, but they can't fly. Expect to see plenty of other wildlife, not all of it so friendly. Then again, the enemy of your enemy is your friend, so we might get eaten by a Thanator or mauled by viper wolves, but they might also help us do some eco-terrorism to the colonizers. Can you ride a Thanator? Well, if you can't wear an amp suit, you better be able to ride a freaking Thanator, or I want a refund. Anyway, the last Avatar movie showed us the life of nautical Na'vi, but aside from a brief glimpse of swimming, it doesn't seem like Frontiers of Pandora will have too much water. That's fine, as it clearly has sky-high ambitions. The overview trailer calls out 3 biomes: the Kinglor Forest, which should be somewhat familiar to anyone who's seen the movie, the grasslands of the Upper Plains, and the Clouded Forest, where nothing is as it seems, whatever that means. From what we've seen, Frontiers of Pandora looks like something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue, but for anybody impatient for the next Avatar movie or the next Far Cry game, it definitely looks like it'll hold them over. What did you think of this game's big reveal? Let us know in the comments, and for more info on Frontiers of Pandora, check out our interview with the Associate Creative Director, and for everything Avatar and video games, you're already in the right place.